I remember the Christmas when a boy thought it had all been canceled. It happened not in a snowy village with a church spire and cobblestones, but in a gray, sprawling city where the buildings rose high and close together, and the sky at night glowed more with streetlights than with stars. I fly over places like that more often than you might think. Some people imagine I only visit storybook towns with chimneys and steeples. But the truth is, I go wherever there are children, and there are many children in tall apartment blocks and narrow streets. In one of those buildings, squeezed between a busy road and a narrow alley, lived a boy named Theo. Theo's building was nothing special to look at from above. A long rectangle of brick and concrete with rows of windows like square eyes. Some windows had potted plants on the sills, some had curtains, some had nothing at all. On the roof, there were a few old antennae, a crooked laundry line, and a patch of gravel that birds liked to visit when the weather was kind. Inside, it was a place of many languages and smells and sounds. On one floor, someone cooked spicy soup that made the hallway warm and fragrant. On another, you could hear a radio playing old songs in a language most of the neighbors did not understand. Children's laughter echoed up the stairwells in the afternoons. At night, you could hear arguments, televisions, lullabies. That year, as December crept closer, something was different. Theo felt it first. Other years, the building had been full of little signs that Christmas was coming. Mrs. Petrov on the third floor used to hang a paper star in her window. The elderly couple on the second floor always put a tiny fake tree in the hallway with blinking lights that worked about half the time. The family at the end of Theo's corridor would play carols while they cooked. There were smells of cinnamon and baked apples drifting through the cracks in the doors. This year, the star did not appear in the third floor window. The little fake tree stayed in its box. The carols were replaced by the buzz of the news, which always seemed to be reporting something worrying. Prices going up, jobs being lost, storms in other parts of the world. At home, Theo saw it too. His mother used to hum while she stirred the pot on the stove. She would write lists on scraps of paper, gifts, ingredients for special recipes, reminders to call relatives. She would ask Theo what he hoped for, and even if he asked for something big, she would smile and say, "Well, you never know. Christmas is full of surprises." This time, she was quiet. The lists were shorter. She stared at the numbers on her phone when she checked the bank, her lips pressed together. When Theo asked what she wanted for Christmas, she laughed once, but it was a tired sort of laugh. "Just a peaceful day," she said, "and you by my side. That would be enough." He nodded, but inside, he felt a hollow place where the usual Christmas excitement should have been. One evening, about a week before Christmas, Theo came home from school with his cheeks red from the cold and his scarf hanging half off. He stomped snow from his boots in the lobby and looked around. The building hallway was dim. The fluorescent light flickered. There were no garlands, no paper snowflakes, no tinsel, just the same gray walls and the same old notices peeling from the bulletin board. He hesitated by the stairs and said it out loud, though no one seemed to be listening. "Maybe Christmas isn't happening this year." Now, you might think those words would be like a stone dropping and sinking, disappearing at once, but words like that, honest, troubled words, have a way of traveling. They swip through cracks and under doors. They echo up stairwells and out into the night. Sometimes, if you are listening from very high above, you hear them. I heard Theo. I was at the pole then, of course, with my lists and my maps and the snow swirling in great white patterns outside the windows. But my attention turned, like a compass needle, toward that tall city building and the boy standing in its lobby. No, I thought, Christmas is happening. It always is, but he cannot see it yet. That night, as Theo lay in his narrow bed with the blankets pulled up to his chin, he listened to the sounds of the building, water running in pipes. Music thudding faintly through the wall, a baby crying somewhere above, a siren far away. He wished for something he could not quite name. Not a toy, though there were toys he liked. Not sweets, though he would not have refused them. He wished for that feeling, the togetherness, the sense that the day was special, that everyone had agreed to turn towards something bright, just for a little while. "I wish Christmas would come back," he whispered into his pillow. "I heard that too. I do not always come with a jingle of bells and a sudden appearance. Most often, I come as an idea, a nudge, a picture in the mind that will not go away." That night, I leaned close to Theo's heart and placed one small idea there, as gently as you might set an ornament on a delicate branch. In his dream, he saw the lobby of his building filled with light. He saw paper snowflakes hanging from the ceiling, made from pages torn from old magazines. He saw a cardboard box wrapped in leftover gift paper, labeled Toys to Share, with children crowding around it, laughing as they traded. He saw a table with a pot of soup, steam curling in the air, and neighbors standing around with cups in their hands. He saw Mrs. Petrov's star shining again, but this time hanging in the lobby where everyone could see it. He woke with his heart pounding. The idea did not vanish with the dream. It stayed, like a song stuck in his head. At breakfast, he stared at the nearly empty jar of jam and the heel of bread on his plate, thinking. "What if I made Christmas?" he blurted. His mother, who was staring at her coffee, blinked. "What, love?" "What if we made Christmas in the building?" he said. Not like before, not with big things, but something. Decorations, sharing food. We could all do it together, so it doesn't feel so empty. She looked at him for a long moment. There were dark circles under her eyes. "We don't have much," she said honestly. "I know," he replied, "but everyone has something small, and small things add up." She almost said it's not that simple. If she had, the idea might have dimmed. But she looked at his face, earnest, hopeful, much too serious for his age, and something in her softened. "You could ask," she said. "Start there." So he did. That afternoon, instead of going straight up to his apartment, Theo stopped at the first door on his floor. He took a deep breath and knocked. The door opened a crack. A little girl's eye peered out, then widened. "Theo," she said, pulling the door wider. "Come in." Inside, her mother was folding laundry on the sofa, the television murmuring in the background. The room was small but tidy. On the low table sat a single red candle that had already been burned halfway down. "I had a dream," Theo said, his words tumbling over one another. "About the building. We made Christmas in the lobby. Everyone brought something. Decorations, food, music. It was nice. Do you think we could try?" The girl's mother smiled sadly. "We don't have much," she began. "I know," he said quickly. "But do you have scissors, paper? We could make snowflakes. That's something." She paused, then nodded. "We have those." By evening, there was a small stack of paper snowflakes on their table, each one carefully cut, each one a little different. The little girl had glitter glue, and she dotted the edges until they sparkled. When they were finished, Theo carried them reverently to the lobby and taped them to the ceiling with borrowed tape from the caretaker's cupboard. He stepped back and looked up. The gray hallway was still gray. The light still flickered, but the snowflakes danced slightly in the draft from the front door, catching the light. "It's a start," he thought. The next day, he went to the door of the elderly couple on the second floor. They used to put the fake tree out. "We're too old for all that now," the old man grumbled when Theo asked about it. "Takes too much effort, and the lights hardly work." "But the tree still exists?" Theo asked. "In the cupboard," the old woman admitted, gathering dust. "Could I use it?" he asked. "For everyone?" The old couple looked at each other. Then the woman nodded. That evening, the little plastic tree stood in the lobby, a bit crooked, its branches bent from years in storage. Half the lights flickered. A few didn't work at all, but it stood there like a small, brave soldier, On the third day, Theo knocked on Mrs. Petrov's door. She opened it with a sigh, wearing a faded housecoat. Her star, he noticed, lay on a shelf inside, its paper edges slightly torn. "I thought maybe you could hang it downstairs," he said, "for everyone, like a building star." She looked at it, then at him. "My husband made this," she murmured. "Years ago. I didn't think anyone noticed it." "I did," he said, "every year." Her eyes filled suddenly. Without a word, she gently lifted the star and placed it in his hands. "Hang it high," she said. Each day, he knocked on more doors. Sometimes people frowned. Sometimes they shook their heads. But often, after a moment's hesitation, they said, "Well, we do have this old box of ornaments," or "I can bring a tray of cookies if I can find flour," or "My cousin has a guitar. Maybe he could come and play." On the day before Christmas Eve, Theo dragged an old cardboard box from the recycling area into the lobby. He wrapped it in leftover newspaper and a scrap of shiny paper someone had given him, and wrote on it in big letters, "Toys to share. Take one, leave one if you can." He put in a small car he had outgrown, a puzzle missing a piece, and a stuffed bear he still loved, but was ready to see loved again by someone smaller. The box looked very empty. At night, as families passed through the lobby, some children glanced at it and tugged their parents' sleeves. A few parents shook their heads, but one little boy, his eyes wide, put in a plastic dinosaur that roared when you pressed its belly. A girl added a doll whose hair had been brushed so often it had become a fluffy cloud. Someone slipped in a new coloring book with only the first page used. The box began to fill. By Christmas Eve, I could see the difference from the sky. The building still looked like any other block of brick and concrete. But when I came in closer, I saw paper snowflakes in the lobby, a small fake tree strung with a mismatched but cheerful assortment of ornaments, Mrs. Petrov's star hanging from the ceiling, and the wrapped box of toys sitting proudly near the wall. The caretaker, who had grumbled about that boy and his ideas at first, had swept the floor and wiped the handprints from the glass door, though he pretended not to care. That evening, Theo's mother carried down a pot of soup. She had stretched what they had with water and spices, adding a handful of noodles. It smelled better than it had any right to. She set it on a small table in the lobby with a ladle and stack of mismatched cups. Soon, other neighbors arrived with what they could spare: a plate of cookies, some slightly burned at the edges, a bowl of rice, a basket of bread heels and crusts, which tasted lovely when warmed. Someone brought a thermos of tea. Someone else shyly offered a bowl of candies they had saved. They did not call it a party. That word felt too grand. But slowly, the lobby filled. Children ran back and forth, giggling at the sight of the toy box, showing off their traded treasures. The old couple from the second floor sat on chairs against the wall, watching with soft smiles. Mrs. Petrov stood under her star, arms folded, eyes bright. In one corner, a teenager strummed a guitar, and people hummed along to songs they half remembered. And in the middle of it all, looking a little astonished and a lot happy, stood Theo. He had no idea, of course, that I was watching from above, my sleigh resting lightly on a nearby rooftop, while the reindeer snorted and shook their heads, sending up tiny clouds of steam. He thinks he only put up paper and a tree, I thought, but he'd have stitched the whole building together, one small thread at a time. Later that night, when the children in that building finally went to bed, tired and full of soup and stories, I did what I always do. I went from apartment to apartment, leaving little surprises. A book here, a small car there, a warm scarf in one home that needed it, an envelope with a gift card in another where the worry had been especially heavy. In Theo's room, I found him asleep with his arm flung over his face, as if he still could not quite believe the evening had been real. On his table lay a scrap of paper covered in notes. Ask the twins about lights. Remember tape. Tell Mrs. P, thank you big. I left him a simple gift, a set of good colored pencils and a thick sketch pad, and something less visible, the steady, quiet knowledge that what he had done mattered. In the days and years that followed, the people in that building would remember that Christmas differently from the ones before. They would remember not what they lacked, but what they made together when times were hard. Even when the world outside remained complicated and uncertain, they knew they could always bring a bit of light into their hallway, into each other's lives. And sometimes, when December rolled around again, someone would say, "Remember when Theo made Christmas?" And they would smile. So if you find yourself, this year, looking around and thinking, maybe Christmas isn't happening, I hope you will remember that tall, ordinary building and the boy who refused to let it go quiet. Remember that you do not have to wait for someone else to bring the season to you. With paper and tape, with a pot of soup, with a knock on a neighbor's door and a shared song, you can help make it where you stand. I will be out there, as I always am, flying over grand cathedrals and tiny apartments, mountain cottages and city blocks. And when I see a place where there should be no Christmas at all by the world's standards, and yet there is, because someone like Theo decided to make it, I will smile and tip my hat to you. Merry Christmas, my friend. May you never forget that in your hands, in your heart, you too hold the power to make Christmas.